On today's show, who are the Dallas Mavericks' top 11 rotation players? Who's on the bubble? What's good for Dereck Lively? And how do the Mavs stack up against the rest of the West? One analytic person says they're pretty deep. Talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
10 Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I think the intro video was playing over, but Isaac just waterfalled a ton of water into his mouth off camera. Totally threw me off. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Where the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day and to comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section. List the Mavs' top 11 rotation players. Who's on the bubble? I'm curious what you think. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor, Mavs.com, the Wet Wonder, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
The Wet Wonder is such an awkward nickname to throw at the top here.
Of all my nicknames, is that the worst? That can't be the worst one.
That totally threw me off here. All right, so I got a question. I need y'all's help. Should I be worried about my friend? All right, I need some advice.
Is this gonna be a hypothetical where it's about me?
No, it's not you.
The Bengals won today. I'm okay. I'm doing okay.
The Ravens game is tough for me, but so I went to my friend's house the other day, and he's like, "Dude, I'm into sports gambling now." And I was like,
"Oh
God. All right, let's look at some odds here."
Can I hold $50?
And so he pulls out a notepad.
Oh God.
And he has like all of his bets on this notepad. And he's like telling me about his parlays, different stuff. We watched some games. And I was like, all right, cool. Added some little fun to it. Somebody scored. He had hit the parlay. We're like super hyped together and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, good day. Then I was like, hey, we're talking about the weekend. I was like, hey, what'd you do yesterday? He's like, well, I was watching Appalachian State last night. And dude, when they kicked a field goal, I won. And I was like, all right, now we need to have a talk. So it was.
At what level do you do an intervention?
Yeah. At what level do I do an intervention? Because when he talked about watching Appalachian State on a Saturday night, I think that was my moment. But should I or should I not?
By the way, if you're gonna go in any of this, he's using FanDuel for everything, right? By the way, but
I used it in a FanDuel ad last week.
Yeah, but do it in moderation and all that, and seek help if you need any. 1-800-GAMBLER if you have a problem. By the way, you can call.
I'll text that. Let me
you can call
text
that number. So maybe we should send him to 1-800-GAMBLER and they'll walk him through the steps to recovery and see.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, it does make it a little more fun. So I guess if you're bored, I found myself bored on Saturday night my wife went on a trip and I was just hanging out with my dog and I was like, man, what should I do right now? And then I was like looking at college games. Like, I'm not about to watch one of these college games, but maybe if I had some money on it, I would have done it. So maybe your friend's just lonely. Hang out with your friend more, Isaac.
He's in Kentucky. I can't hang out.
Well, I don't know. Zoom him or something. FaceTime him. I don't know. There you go. Let Isaac know in the comments what you think about it. On today's show, though, do the Mavericks have 240 minutes? If you look at 5 positions times 48 minutes, that's 240 minutes for every game that a team has to fill out. And so David Locke, my boss and host of Locked On Jazz and the Jazz radio play-by-play guy, and just a general analytics.
How long has he been with the Jazz?
Man, a long time.
Well, you slacker. You should know this.
Well, I know he started.
He's one of those guys that when he comes into town, everybody from the team knows who he is. And that's
since 2009.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Time. That's when you know somebody is very highly respected around the league whenever a team is coming through the city and away team comes in and then they're walking around the court and you're like every single time that person's walking around with a Jazz, something on, everybody is talking to him. You're like, all right, that's somebody right there.
Yeah. So he has this stat where he goes through and he projects which teams have 240 rotation minutes. And he thinks the Mavericks have that. And so who has it, who doesn't have it? You might be surprised some of the teams that don't have 240 like quality rotation minutes. He doesn't really count rookies. He doesn't count players that like weren't good last year, things like that. And so we'll talk about that. But I want to start here. Who are the Dallas Mavericks top rotation players? Because I think over the last couple of games, we've seen 2 preseason games now. Kid has tried a couple of things, and so he put Dwight Powell in, and then he put Richaun Holmes in earlier in the second game and things like that. But who do we think is the Mavs' top 11? Let's just go through it. I think there are some pretty obvious ones. You get Luka, Kyrie, Grant Williams, Josh. That's 4. Those are I think our starters, right? I'm going to add Tim and Maxey because those are rotation players from last year. They're just going to get minutes.
And we're like, there's no. I mean, do you want to pause on Tim for a second? There's no world in which Tim is getting DNP CDs. Like that's just there's some people out there that's like, dude, Tim's been in trade rumors. They want to trade him. You know, you might want Hardy over Tim getting these minutes, and like I get all of that, but Tim's too good to get DNP CDs. Yeah. And even if you want to trade him or any of that, you're not gonna DNP CD a guy and then call around teams and say, hey, give us something valuable for this guy that's not even in our rotation. So Tim is going to play. I'm with you. That's why Tim and Max here right there.
Tim averaged 30 minutes a game last year. He had 32 games where he played 30 to 39 minutes a game in a game last year. He had 27 where he played 20 to 29. He only had 5 games where he played 10 to 19. So like he's going to play, and he's going to play like 20 minutes if he plays. So, yeah, I'm with you. Jason Kidd apparently talked to him about being 6th man. So, like, he's got a role on the team.
Has he yet?
Yeah, apparently. Maybe he didn't. So then if you go Tim and Maxey, that's 6. I'm going to put the 2 centers together in Lively and Dwight on, like, a sliding scale. That's 2 more, right? That gets me to 8. And then my last 3, I think, are Seth, Jaden, and Dante Exum.
I'm telling you right now, Omax has to play.
He's on the outs right now.
After 2 preseason games, you think he's on the outs?
Well, just
you
because
think he's going to go from starting preseason game 1 to not even in the rotation.
Who do you get out then? Seth, Hardy, or Exum?
I think it's Hardy or Exum.
We've heard that Exum has a position in this rotation though.
Yeah, I don't think that they're gonna I don't think that they would start Omax in game 1 and then just say you're not even in the rotation.
But I think that was Jason Kidd's whole point, is that it was a test to see how they responded, and maybe Jason Kidd will take those games with more of a grain of salt or less of a grain of salt.
Are you asking me?
I don't know which direction that phrase goes in. Is it if he takes less stock in it? I don't know, but
he doesn't tell us the truth. But my thing with Omax is they don't have any other. If they had Thibault, okay, I maybe I could hear it, but they don't have any other bigger defender outside of Maxey.
Yeah,
like you got to have somebody else in the rotation that can guard a 4.
It's just Grant and Maxey. I mean that's honestly Grant and Maxey. That's pretty good for guarding 4s, but like a mobile bigger wing, that's hard because Grant and Maxey aren't really even that good at it.
And see, I would almost rather, I mean, there's so many different routes you go in the rotation, but I could almost see a world in which Omax plays a little bit more than Dwight because they'll roll out that like stretch 5 lineup, that 5 out like they did in the second half the other night with Maxey at the 5, Grant at the 4, stuff like that.
But even if so, I went through and I tried to do like, all right, let me do the exact minutes at each position, just guard, wing, and center. I didn't do like, shooting guard, point guard, whatever. If you give Lively and Powell 20 minutes each at center a game, and then Maxey gets 8 minutes a game at center, that's your center rotation. So you still got to play 2 more. You still got to play, even if you give Maxey a full rotation shift at center, you still got to find 40 more minutes to give out at center. And I think Lively and Dwight fill that out. And so I think they'll play.
Yeah.
But yeah, where does Omax find minutes? And I think that's something interesting. We'll talk about it a little bit later. How does Omax find minutes? Richaun Holmes is not even there. Maybe it's a sliding scale with Dwight and Richaun Holmes. Maybe Lively is in and out of the rotation throughout the year. maybe Exum doesn't play as much as we think that he might, even though we've heard that he's got a spot in the rotation. So that's where the Mavericks roster sits right now. Let us know in the comment section what you think. Name your top 11. That's mine. And we'll see coming up. Coming up, though, let's talk about David Locke's 240 minutes. Who has it? Who doesn't have it in the West? How do the Mavs stack up? We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Jace Medical. Jace has you covered with something that I had never really considered or thought about before in my life. They have the Jace case. I've got one right here. You can get it. Comes with your 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. You get this, and you know that if I'm in an emergency and I don't have things that I need for an infection or something else, you can take these tablets, you can take all this. They'll have you set up with a board-certified physician so you can ask questions and do all that. They've got this booklet that'll tell you all kinds of different things. Here's right here, pneumonia. They have just take 1 capsule by mouth twice per day for 5 days with this, and it'll take care of that. If you're in a bind, if you're in a position where you can't go get medicine another way or can't go see a doctor, something like that. If you're traveling or something like that, check out Jace Case, check out Jace Medical, and see how you can get a Jace Case. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using the code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's Jace, Jase, medical.com.
It's great. It's great, dude. Dude, it's great. It's great. It's great, broski. Bro, name it. It's great. It's great. It's great, bro. It's great. It's great. It's great. This life's great, bro. I have no complaints.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad each and every day, listening to the show. If you want to support the show, text us, get text alerts from us on Mavs Rumors. If you want to watch my Mavs watchbacks, where I kind of stop, look at film, that kind of thing, I did the first quarters of the first 2 preseason games, so you can go check out that. If you want the link to that in the subtext, text us, and I'll send it to you right away. So click the link in the description wherever you're listening to this. All right, Isaac, we talked about who's in the Mavs rotation. Let's talk about 240 minutes. So David Locke has this thing that he does where he goes through and he tries to rank teams or tries to go through and see which teams have 240 rotation minutes. And he doesn't include rookies. He is pretty conservative about some of these numbers where, all right, who can give me 20 minutes? Who can give me a solid 30, 34? Star players will give you, 34. That's like the high end amount of minutes. He doesn't go, really higher than that. And he goes through and he says, all right, who has 240 minutes to give and who doesn't? Here are the teams in the West. We're just going to do the West for right now. Here are the teams in the West he thinks have 240 rotation minutes. The Warriors, feel good about that one. They got a lot of high-end guys. Clippers, feel good, pretty deep team. Timberwolves, who we just saw. I think we can all agree that team probably does because they're deeper than I think a lot of people think. And then the Mavericks. The Mavericks do, and these are the players that he considered in the rotation. I think it's changed a little bit from what he considered, but you can still see it. Luka, Kyrie, Tim Hardaway, Grant Williams, Dwight Powell, Maxey, Seth Curry, Josh Green. He had Richaun Holmes in there, but he didn't have Dereck Lively, so just flop those 2. That's fine. And then Jaden Hardy. And those are his players that he looked at, and he didn't include Lively, Omax, Exum, Derrick Jones Jr., whoever else. And the Mavericks have 240 minutes. What's your response to the Mavericks being one of the 4 teams that fill out a rotation like that?
Well, it kind of goes into our conversation we had. Gosh, it was a while back about the Mavericks roster being deeper than the past year or so. That when you start looking at the bench and you're like, all right, we're sitting there talking about if Jaden Hardy takes a leap. Then you have a Jaden Hardy. You still have Tim, who we just seen a few nights ago in that second Abu Dhabi game, hit 3 threes, and it's like, all right, dude. When he's hitting threes, it feels like every shot's going in. And then you sign Seth Curry, who everybody loved that signing for a good amount, and he had some good basketball in Philly and Brooklyn and stuff. And it's like, all right, well, if you're going to sign Seth, then he's one of the best shooters in the league. Then I'm assuming Seth's going to feel like he's playing here. Jason Kidd talked about him playing a role and stuff.
He said he's going to play a lot. And I was like, oh, a lot?
Yeah. So, and then, you make this investment, and it's not just, hey, Isaac likes Omax, but you make this trade, one, he's a first round pick, and, 2, you make a trade really to get him. They took on the contract of Richaun Holmes to get Omax, and because they did like him a lot. we heard how much Dallas liked him, in the pre-draft process and stuff. So, and he hasn't done anything so far in camp or anything to to tell the Mavericks different. So it's like you start looking across the roster and in that bench unit, and it's like, all right, well, here's a guy. Now there's still some questions. You're like, all right, what's the for sure certainties of some of the players that you kind of don't know the answers to that. But yes, I think they have a deeper rotation, 10, 11 guys. But I think one of the things when we're talking about this 240 minutes is what means more, a deeper rotation or a better top three? Because you look at a team like Denver, and I have David's numbers here that you sent me, and to where David has the Mavericks at 240, but Denver at 205. And the reason he has them at 205 is because they lost some depth, this offseason. Bruce Brown leaves, Jeff Green, goes to Houston. They lost a couple pieces, and there's a lot of projection for them in those rotation minutes. Some of their young guys that they took, I got a couple, guys in the draft. They're asking a lot of Christian Brown. You start looking at their bench and you're like, all right, well, now they're asking a lot from some young guys here to fill some of those bench roles. So, but who would you rather be? I think a lot of us would say we'd still rather be the Nuggets, the defending champions.
Well, absolutely. But the 240 minutes thing is not about the playoffs at all. Where in the playoffs, you don't really you're not projecting 34 minutes a game for your star player, right? You're projecting more like almost 40 minutes for your star player because they're just going to play a ton. And so that is different. And that's when we talk about high-end rotation players. I don't know that the Mavericks have many high-end rotation players. It's Luka, Kyrie. Grant Williams can probably step into that role. I expect him to step into that kind of a player this season. I hope Josh Green can, but after that, it's hard to try and find somebody. Maybe Maxey is like a low-end, high-end rotation player. It's like you're just kind of stretching at that point. And so I did a show a couple weeks ago, or maybe like recently, where I said, how can the Mavericks get 7 like high-end rotation players to compete for a title? Because they're far away from that right now. And that's what the Nuggets have. They've got at least 6 high-end rotation players, and one of them's an MVP, which is huge. And so like if you've at least got 6, you're doing really well, because then all you have to do is find like a couple guys here and there to fill out 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there in the playoffs. But now this 240 number is more about regular season, how you're going to last throughout the regular season. And if you look at the difference between the Mavericks this year and the Mavericks last year, I don't think the Mavericks had 240 minutes last year, especially at the end of last year.
See, I'd like to see David's numbers for Denver last year, and where he had Denver last year. What was the Bruce Brown minutes projected into that he had a huge role in the team?
It's a great point, because this is a projection, right? And this is not maybe Exum comes back and all of a sudden he's, because David didn't even include Exum in his like projections, but maybe Exum comes back and he's good on defense. His shot is there, like we saw in EuroLeague, and all of a sudden he's quality rotation minutes. Well, that didn't factor into his numbers, or Lively even. Like he doesn't project rookies into this, and so like the Thunder are really low on this. They only have 190 on David's projections because they've got a lot of young guys. They're bringing back Chet. We don't know what to expect from him, and so he projected kind of low for them. And,
but you look at a team like Phoenix, David projects Phoenix right now to have 200. Like he has Phoenix at 200, meaning they got to find the 40 extra minutes with all of the surrounding cast, right? Like all of the, the minimum contracts that they signed and the random pieces that they brought in. And I think it's obviously this is a lot of projecting on David's part, but it's a good exercise to do.
It's all projecting on David.
Well, it's a good exercise to do when you're preparing for the season, David has to talk about all these teams all season long as they, Jazz play these teams, but it's a good reminder for us when you start, looking at the West and you start looking at some of the, not just storylines and narratives, but man, it's like, all right, Phoenix really has to figure out some other rotation stuff. Like Denver's bench is really strong when you look at some of these numbers. And then you look at another team like the Timberwolves and you're like,
they got a lot.
Dang, I mean, we just played the Timberwolves 2 straight games. So it's like, they're fresh on our minds, but if we didn't play them, would you be thinking in your mind, like, dang, Minnesota's pretty deep when you look at their roster, and that could give them a little bit of an edge, this coming season. So it's a fun exercise.
I would look at them as being pretty deep. Even before this, but yeah, they've got a couple of guys that have to really pan out. Nickeil Alexander-Walker did pretty well when the Mavs played him, but he hasn't done good in stops before. Shake Milton comes over. Got Mike Conley, who's older, but I mean, their center rotation and big man rotation, Gobert, Towns, and Naz Reid, and then throw Kyle Anderson in there as like your backup 4 kind of guy. Like that's probably as good as there is in the NBA.
I love Naz Reid, man.
I don't know if Naz was great. I don't know if there is a better rotation there. So it's an interesting stat. Here are the other. I'll just throw out the other ones because I know if I was listening to this show, I'd want to know who the other ones were in the West. So again, the ones at 240: Warriors, Clippers, Timberwolves, Mavericks. The ones that are real close: Lakers have 225, according to David. Grizzlies have 220. Kings have 220. Those are the ones that are closest. Pelicans have 210. Nuggets have 205. Suns, Jazz, and Spurs all have 200. Thunder have 190. Blazers have 180. Rockets have 168. Again, he doesn't really do rookies in there. And these are they're quality minutes as well. So I don't know if, does Dylan Brooks count? Coming up, I want to ask a couple questions about the Mavericks rotation. How can Omax get minutes? What's enough minutes for Dereck Lively this year? A good amount of minutes. We'll talk about that kind of stuff coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Game Time. Game Time has so many tickets. I know a bunch of people, when they were going to Wings games this year, were like, all right, if I'm going to go to a Wings game, I'm just going to go on Game Time, wait till the last second, and get real cheap tickets. That's how you can do it with Game Time. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You see the view from your seat when you buy it. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know that you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Go check it out. See what's available coming up for this fall. There's tons of stuff in DFW. I got ALDS tickets right now. I can get Game 3.
Got 'em?
Game 3. I can get $92 for a seat. That's pretty good for a playoff game.
Go watch that sweep.
I might be thinking about that. So go check out Game Time. You can wait until the last minute to see if they can get deals for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, all one word, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
All right, Isaac. We talked about the Mavs rotation. We've talked about how the Mavs stack up around the West. Let's ask some kind of questions about the Mavericks right now. What's a good amount of minutes for Dereck Lively, do you think? Because he's kind of been my big takeaway from I was just on Locked On NBA today with Jackson Gatlin, and he asked me what's my kind of big takeaway from the first 2 preseason games. I said it's Lively. Lively's looked really good to me, especially against a team that attacks the rim with Anthony Edwards and that has Rudy Gobert to kind of go up against. How many minutes is good enough for Lively? Because I kind of project him around 20. Mm-hmm. And do we think?
I was gonna say, do you have any guys that you want to comp him to?
Yeah. So here's a couple of comps. Kevon Looney only plays like 24 minutes a game for the Warriors. I think that's pretty good. Robert Williams played 24 minutes a game for the Celtics last year,
but he didn't play because he was injured.
But he was injured a lot. Walker Kessler played 23 minutes a game last year. Now those went up and up throughout the season, but I feel like in the aggregate, 23 minutes a game, is good. I have Lively and Dwight both playing like 20 minutes a game, and then Maxey playing like 8 minutes a game at center, and then maybe we'll get some Richaun Holmes thrown in there here and there. It could be like some kind of sliding scale. But what are your thoughts on that and just the center rotation?
Well, I think 20 is a good number for him. It's all going to depend on fouls, I think. I think he's going to continue getting better to where it's going to be a thing to where, it's just fouls are going to determine how many. I mean, he's obviously going to have to come out of the game, throw Dwight in there. Dwight can run pick and roll with Luka and all that stuff. I think something I do like is the idea of when he's off the floor with Kyrie, and it's Dwight in there with Luka to let them have that chemistry and play and stuff. And then when Luka's off the floor, having Lively in there to run the floor and like run that faster pace with Kyrie. That's something that's kind of like 2 combos and stuff that I'd like to see. But I think foul is going to determine a lot. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I think if he hovers around the 20 minutes, I mean, I think that'll be a huge win, not just for Lively, but for the franchise. That if you take a guy 12th overall pick, a lottery pick as a big man, and he starts, like, let's say they make the playoffs and Lively starts all year for the most part, plays 20 minutes a game, and they're a playoff team, that's a huge win.
Huge win. Another player at Neko Okongwu only averaged like 23 minutes a game. So I think he's around there. I think he's with those guys next year. If you're listening to this and you go, he's got to play more than that. They just can't. I just can't watch Dwight play 20 minutes a game anymore. Here are the guys that played more than that last year. Valanciunas played 25 minutes a game last year. Jakob Poeltl, 26.5 minutes a game last year. Clint Capella, 26.5 minutes. Mitchell Robinson, 27. Steven Adams, 27. Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year, 28. Like, he's not going to play a ton more, right? I mean, I don't think he's cracking that because he's going to have to deal with, like you said, foul trouble and all that. So
fouls are going to be the thing that keeps him from logging a bunch of minutes, I think.
Yeah.
I think fouls more than, he's too skinny. Yeah, inexperience or he's too skinny or something like that. I think, that's going to be the biggest reason.
Yeah. So I think I'm projecting about 20 minutes a game, and I'm feeling good about that, and I'm excited, man. I'm excited to watch him play. After these first 2 preseason games, my excitement level has gone way up because
I'm excited to see him play against somebody that's not Gobert.
I said that on Locked On NBA today.
Yeah, let's see these first. Obviously get Wemby in that first game, but like let's see, this first few weeks of the season, assuming he still starts and all of that, and see him out there with Luka against some non-Gobert Towns teams.
Well, who are there? So they're playing the Pistons last preseason game, but I don't know if Luka will play in that one. Like, we'll see how Jason Kidd decides to do that one.
It's a long break though from.
It's like a 9-10 day break from the Madrid game too.
I would assume most people are going to play in that because if Luka and them don't play in it, then that's going to be what a 2-week off period between the Madrid game to the very first game of the season.
I just heard Lucas like yell like yippee at when you just said 2 weeks off. First game, San Antonio, Brooklyn, Memphis, Chicago. Those are all pretty decent centers to go up against. But yeah, I'm interested to see how and then Jokic.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between having like Steven Adams, a big body. A lot of teams have bigger bodies, but to have a 3-time defensive player and Rudy Gobert, not everybody has Rudy Gobert. So
Nick in the second game of the season, Nick Claxton versus Derek Lively. That one's pretty interesting because that's not a big body. That's like 2 skinny guys going up against each other.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all those teams, it's just. Yeah, let me see him against a non-Rudy, non-Jokic, non-Embiid. There you go.
We touched on this earlier, but what's Omac's path to minutes? Because you said he has to play. And to me, I think if they want to go in and win now and get minutes for Jaden, it's hard for me. Omac is probably 12th on the list to me.
Oh, no. Yeah, I have him much higher. For me, it's Exum versus Hardy. Like, I think that's the battle.
One or the other, not both.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's matchup dependent. As long as Tim's on the team, I think that's the battle. In my opinion, could be totally wrong, but I think when you look at the second unit, it's not as easy as hey, these 5. It's not hockey. These 5 go off, and then these 5 come on.
Yeah.
We know it's not that easy, but I think if you had to do it that way in the second unit, I think it's Seth, Tim, Omax, Maxey, and Dwight. I think that's the second 5, and then it's a. It's a Hardy versus Exum at that point. I just, once again, with Omax, he has to play because you don't have any other 4s out there unless you're just going to go back to asking Maxey to do that. Like, Grant can't play 45 minutes a game. So who's your next guy that's going to be guarding some of these other guys?
The thing about Grant, though, is he's going to play. I have him at 30 minutes a game and that's probably more than what David Locke has him, but I have him at 30 minutes. And he's only going to play 4. I don't think he's going to play any 3 because that's not really what he does. So that's kind of a unique thing about this team compared to the teams in the past with Dorian and Reggie, where they do slide between 3 and 4. I think Grant is like only at the 4, like the power forward at that point. And I have Maxey playing like 14 minutes a game. So that almost gets you all of your 4 minutes at that point if both those guys are healthy.
I mean, let's do air quote Yoda here on positions. It's more like, 3 and 4, it really doesn't even matter anymore. It's just a matter who it's the wings and how you match up, who's going to guard who on the perimeter and all that stuff. So that's you go up against a team. I mean, what was it, Kawhi the other day at media day? I thought it was funny. Somebody asked him about position. He's like, I don't know what position I've played over the past 5 years.
Well, especially with that Clippers team, they're playing small all the time.
Yeah. So I don't think you make the trade on draft night, take on a $12 million contract, get Omax, hype him up like you have, talked about how he's not going to be in the G League in the the opening presser, start him in day one of the preseason, and all of this stuff to say, dude, you're just going to get DNP-CDs. So I don't think I think he's more of the 8th, 9th, 10th man instead of 12th.
I don't always tell you guys the truth.
I think I could totally see that happening with
Dang, those preseason games really rocked you.
I wasn't assuming Omax was going to get minutes going into the preseason or going into training camp. Like when I did my minutes projection before, I thought Omax and Lively were on the outside looking in because I put Richaun Holmes in the Lively spot, and then I didn't have Omax in, and I was like, hey, they're just gonna maybe they'll step up and maybe they'll do this. And Lively has surprised me more than Omax has, and the Mavs have talked more highly about Lively than Omax. They need Lively more than Omax at that position, and so I rose Lively up. I didn't like take Omax down. Basically, is what I'm saying from this. So
and I don't think Omax should start. It should be Josh Green. Like we've been pretty adamant on that over the past week or so. But I think he has to be in the rotation. Coming off the bench there. And so for me, like I think Seth's playing. I think Omax has to play. I think if Tim's on the roster, he's playing. I think that's why you heard, I mean, here, but why Tim's name has been used to try to get another big man out there is because Hardy's sitting right there. So for me, it's Exum versus Hardy. And it wouldn't shock me if one night Hardy just gets in some late fourth quarter minutes and everybody's freaking out about it. And Exum played, 16 minutes that night because they needed a guard to come off the bench and play really good defense.
And guys will get injured. I mean, the Mavericks had they had so many players average like 10. They had 16 players average 10 minutes a game last year. So like Omax will play. I'm not saying he won't play at all, but if everyone's healthy, I think he may be on the outside looking in, and you think it's one of Hardy or Exum.
The biggest thing for Hardy is they don't have anybody else who can create like him outside of the top two.
That's why I think Exum plays.
But I think if the top two are playing, then that's a big what if, because there's injuries and all the other stuff. Because that's where it is. Like, let's say Kyrie sprains his ankle and he's out for a couple weeks. It wouldn't shock me if Jaden Hardy's playing like over 20 minutes a game because they need that. But if both of those guys are healthy and playing, they're going to stagger their minutes. Then they're going to play together a lot. That's where I could see Exum playing over Hardy, and Hardy's not getting in as much because both of those guys are running the offense. Tim can play off those guys to where like Tim running the offense doesn't sound great. So
it'll be interesting to watch. Let us know in the comment section who's the Mavericks top 11. Give me all 11 names. List them all out. Tomorrow we'll be back talking more Dallas Mavericks. We have you've got a game. If you're listening to this on Monday, Tuesday. The game is tomorrow. I'll have the post game after the Madrid game right after. We'll have an episode in the morning as well. But yeah, come back for that tomorrow. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.